Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become that confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I have with me Scott Maderer. He asked me to just think of something, and I didn't do that. So we're going to get it right. Scott Maderer. And Scott got a great background. Let me tell you about this. So in 2017, he and his wife started Inspired Stewardship. That's a business to serve Christian men and couples that are struggling to live out their calling. They work to help align the way you use your time, your talent, and your treasures so that you can identify and live fully authentic lives that allows you to authentically live your calling, serve others, and provide for your family. As certified human behavior consultants and members of John Maxwell's team, they focus on helping you understand yourself, understand others, and through that understanding, building the kingdom. After almost 30 years in education, Scott and Carrie, his wife, founded Inspired Stewardship to live out their calling to coaching in 2011. Now, this is a full-time business offering assistance through one-on-one coaching, speaking, and workshops. His book, Inspired Living, Assemble the Puzzle of Your Call by Mastering Your Time, Your Talent, and Your Treasures, was published by Morgan James on July 2nd, 2024. So it's just going to be coming out. Excellent. I thought we would talk about something that some of you might already know about. You know, those of us that have been around the block a couple times, maybe like myself, have used this before. But I wanted to talk about communication with DISC, D-I-S-C. So please join me in welcoming Scott Maderer as my guest today. Hi, Scott.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here today.
Well, I always love to talk about this because this is understanding behavior, understand the people, you get to know how they'll know, like, and trust you. You can better serve them. It's just a wonderful thing to do. And, through my years, I've done many, many different types of behavioral studies and all the different things. But each time it just brings more insight. And it's often too, you might say, well, I did DISC in like 2000. Do it again. Do it again. All right. So start out with an easy question, then we'll get into the meat of all this. Please tell everyone, where do you call home? Where do you live?
So I actually live out in the middle of nowhere in South Texas. The way I describe it to people is I live 45 minutes to an hour from the closest Walmart, Starbucks, or McDonald's. So that kind of gives people a clue. Oh, you really do live out in the country. Yeah, we drive an hour to go to the grocery store. So that's kind of where we live. But we're close to the big city of San Antonio. That's kind of the closest city that people will recognize and go, oh, yeah, I know where San Antonio is. I'm about 3 hours north of Mexico and about 8 to 9 hours from the next closest state. So people forget how big Texas is, but I'm closer to another country than I am to another state.
Yeah.
But I live here with my wife. My adult son lives in North Texas, up in Dallas, and family all around Texas. And that's pretty much born and bred, lived in Texas most of my life. And though I've traveled a lot for work and other things, this is still where I call home.
You got any boots in your closet?
Actually, no, I don't wear boots nor a
Oh,
cowboy hat, nor do I own a horse.
oh no.
That's all things that everyone nor do I have a large oil field, or big
Well,
horns on the front of my car. I think that's the other one that everyone thinks, right? You got to have a big set of long horns on the front of your car. I will, however, tell you, I live close to a little town called Bandera, that every Saturday they have kind of a festival days event on Saturday mornings. And there is a guy that actually brings a longhorn with a saddle on it that you could take pictures on the back of for just a couple of bucks. I think he charges like $5 for the pictures. So I could take you to
the,
a longhorn, but I
those
don't.
are massive
They are large beasts.
bulls, I guess. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of I think it's Darren Hardy that he had some time in Texas, and he at one time he looked at his closet and he realized he had no more flip-flops. And he had all these boots that replaced the flip-flops. So he
Yeah.
thought it was time to go back to California.
Maybe time to go back, huh?
Mhm. So how do you manage to get more done, but the right things done? You know, we often we stay busy, but do we always do what needs to get done?
Right. That's one of the things that people actually say, and I hate that answer because we all give it. I give it too. So don't misunderstand. I'm not throwing anyone under the bus, but that's our reflexive answer, right? How are you doing? What's going on? Oh, busy, everything, it's busy, it's busy. I actually prefer to help people give the answer to that question. I'm productive instead of I'm busy, because,
Mhm.
and the difference is busy is getting a lot done or having a lot going on. Productive is getting the right things done.
Yeah.
And it is related to DISC as well, in terms of how we think and how we
Mhm.
process. And we'll talk more about DISC in a minute. But a lot of it comes down to actually identifying what are the right things, right? I mean, that's kind of inherent in get the right things done is, well, I know what the right things are. And so
Mhm.
one quick frame that people can use for that, and that helps them kind of begin to zero in on what is the most important thing to be doing right now, is kind of two questions. One is just kind of a matrix or a frame of reference, and then the other is a question you can ask. So I'll give you the matrix first. Some of you have probably heard of it. It's famous. It's called the Eisenhower matrix. Simply has two kind of axes. On one axis is important and not important, and on the other axis is urgent and not urgent.
Mhm.
Gives you four squares, right? Important and urgent, important and not urgent, not urgent, not important, and what would that be? Not important but urgent, right?
Mhm.
So an example of each: important and urgent, your house is on fire. That's an important thing and it's an urgent thing. We got to deal with it right now. Urgent, but not important, is like your phone is ringing.
Mhm. Yeah.
The phone ringing has a feeling of urgency to it, but honestly, you could probably let it go to voicemail and be okay 90% of the time.
Mhm.
On the other side, if you go with something that's important but not urgent, that's things like sitting down and doing your annual planning. That's things like sitting down and setting up financial systems that will actually work in the long term. It's the deep work that moves the needle. And that's honestly the quadrant that we usually ignore. And then the last one is not urgent, not important. That's things like, relaxation, binging on Netflix. Immediately, by the way, it's not that these four, one of them's better than the other. They're all valuable. They're all important.
Mhm.
Things happen in all of them that you need to do. I mean, it's good
Right.
to have self-care. It's good to have some stuff that's not urgent, not important,
Mhm.
binging on Netflix every once in a while. Nothing wrong with that. The problem is whenever that mix of what goes in what square is wrong. If you got
Yeah.
too much out of one square and not enough out of others, and clearly the one that we most often ignore is the not urgent but important
Yeah.
stuff.
Right.
That's the stuff that we always put off because we're so busy doing the urgent important, and doing, which we should do. I mean, it's urgent and it's important, we need to do it. But oftentimes we'll fill our day with the urgent but not important instead of the important but not urgent. So a lot of it comes down to identifying what goes in those four squares and then simply asking yourself the question, what's the next smallest action I can take that would get me moving on one of
Mm.
these? Because often, what happens is we look at the the things that are important but not urgent, like I mentioned annual planning, and go, that's overwhelming. I don't even know where to start. Financial systems for my business, I don't even know where to start. Yeah. So what's the tiniest action you could take that would move you in that direction? Doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be a little tiny thing, because oftentimes once you get started on that journey, then the next little action becomes obvious. It's kind of overcoming that inertia and getting the ball rolling
Right.
that helps us actually get those things started and eventually get them done.
Very true. I was a project manager for many years, and usually getting those small little things to get the ball rolling was what actually made you very productive.
Mm-hmm.
So how can you use DISC to find out just how to communicate but understand others so that you can lead them well?
So a lot of folks, if you're listening to this podcast, you're interested in leadership, you work in leadership, that's an area that you're studying. And a lot of times as leaders, what we have to realize is it's incumbent upon us to actually not only understand ourselves, but understand other people so that we can communicate well. By the way, all of us communicate. I don't care what position you're in. I don't care if you're a line employee, a stay-at-home mom, a CEO of a multi-million dollar corporation. We communicate all day long, every day. It's part of the human condition.
Yeah.
It's part of what we do. So real quick, let me kind of give a basic, just in case anyone listening doesn't know DISC. DISC is very famous. Most of you have probably heard of it. So I'm not going to go into a 4-hour monologue, though I could, about what DISC is. And the reason I like it, just to highlight that, you mentioned you've taken a lot of different communication and personality assessments. So have I. I think I've taken just about every one that's offered at one time or another, and most of them more than once. But the thing I like about DISC is it's simple enough that I can carry it in my head, and yet it's accurate enough that I can actually apply it, if that makes sense. I can get benefit from it, and yet it's also simple enough I can carry it in my head. I'm not bright enough to carry some of these in my head because they're way too complicated. I'm sure there are people that can. It's not me. So I needed something that I could kind of put in my pocket and carry around with me. When I was in corporate for 11 years, I led a team of 180 people. I had lots of leaders, reporting up through me. I was a high-level executive, all of those sorts of things. Plus, I was doing client work. So I was showing up in the client's office and having to communicate with them. As a school teacher before that, a lot of communication. And so I learned DISC because it was a way that I could frame it and understand myself, understand others, do it quickly, and then actually apply it. So DISC, there's 4 letters, DISC. Real truth is everyone, let me rephrase that, almost everyone is a blend of several of these. Every once in a while, you get somebody that's purely only one, pretty rare. And every once in a while, even rarer, you get someone that's an equal balance of all 4. Again, very rare, does happen. Most of the time, you're a blend of 2 or maybe 3 of them. So quick description. D is the dominant type. These are the results-oriented, the go-getter. They care about the bottom line. They're directive. Get to the point. Let's get it done. Move on. Lead, follower, get out of the way. Sometimes if they're not doing good job with themselves, it's lead, follower, I'm going to run over you. That kind of person. By the way, none of these are good or bad. All of these just are. They're how we're wired, how we approach the world, how we think about it, how we communicate about it, how we understand it. They're value neutral. A D, under control, understands themselves. Fantastic leader, fantastic worker. They get a lot done. A D, out of control, leaves bodies in their wake. So it's not the D that's good or bad. It's whether or not you've learned how to moderate it and control it. By the way, that's about 10. Yeah. It's about 10% of the population.
Yeah.
In my frame, I think that's because that, God knew what he was doing. And it's like, well, if I put too many of these on the planet, they're just going to kill each other. So let me, let me put a small salting of them. They're about 10% of the population. By the way, for the last group that I haven't described yet, I'm going to list some percentages as I go. They're not going to add up to exactly 100%. Don't freak out. That'll make more sense in a minute. The I's is the second type, right? The I's are the inspirational type. These are the fun-loving. They love energy. They want fun. They like to talk about people, especially themselves. Not because they're selfish, by the way. A lot of people misunderstand I's for being self-centered. They're not self-centered. It's just they want to talk about things that are interesting to them. And the things that are interesting to them are fun, people, energy, entertainment, these sorts of things. They're a lot of fun to be around. Honestly, they could be great workers. They could be great salespeople. They can do lots of things well. They're often the person on the team that kind of is the one that pulls people together and helps them work together and gets them going. They're great to have around. Sometimes you do have to help them remember that, there's actually work that needs to be done and that kind of thing. Occasionally they can get a little distracted or a little lost to get out of control, but in control, they're the glue that can often hold a team together in some ways and motivate them to get things done. S, the third type, DIS, and I'm going around this way on purpose. The S type is a supporter. These are the status quo people. They're the security people. These are people that want fairness. They want equality. They want things to be taken care of, and they want the people to be taken care of. They're the nurturers in the group. They're kind of, if you have someone at work that you call the work mom or the work dad, odds are really good they're high in the S category, okay? These people are some of the nicest people on the planet. Again, one of the worries is out of control, they can be taken advantage of, and then that S stands for sucker, okay? So you got to be, they have to learn boundaries. They have to learn how to actually work through things, and a little bit of conflict can be okay as long as we do it right and that kind of thing. So they're again, great glue. By the way, the I's, about 20% of the population, give or take, and the S's is somewhere between 35 and 45% of the population. They are by far the largest group. Right. If you have to guess, if you don't know any better, start as if the person is an S and go from there. Because statistically, you're going to be right. The last group is the C's. These are the cautious type. They're again about 20 to 25% of the population. I warned you, they didn't add up to 100. I know they didn't add up to 100. They're ranges and they're approximations. The C's are the rule followers. They're the perfectionists. That's why it bothers them that they don't add up to 100%, because it's like, it's percentages. It should add up to 100. I know, I'm one of you too. It's okay. Okay, calm down. But they're going to follow the directions. They're going to be the person, but they're also the one that can irritate the heck out of everyone else, because they're sitting there and we said, okay, here's what we got to go do. And they go, why? Or I need more details. Or give me the SOP. And you're like, we don't have an SOP. We're just making this up as we go along. They're that person that needs that structure and that commitment and the rules and the direction. The real truth is, this is again a grid, a matrix. On the one axis up and down, at the top is outgoing and at the bottom is reserved. Outgoing, by the way, is not extroverted. People misunderstand and think I'm talking about extroversion. Outgoing has more to do with your internal engine. So when I was talking about D's and I's, I deliberately was talking faster. I was using more energy. I'm kind of jumping up and down. I'm moving my hands. That's their engine. They're go-getters. They move. They're energy. Yeah, like that. Reserved, on the other hand, the S's and the C's, they're a lot calmer. They're a lot more collected. As I'm talking about them, I slow down a little bit. I talk a little softer, talk a little quieter, move a little slower, give them more time to process. Right. You ask a C a question, you need to wait a little while. Yeah, because give them time to process. And then maybe they'll actually answer the question, or they'll ask for more information. Yes. One or the other. But it takes them a while. That's not because they're stupid. It's literally they're thinking through about 10 million things in that 7 to 10 seconds that you maybe have, it hadn't even crossed your mind yet. And they're thinking through all of this stuff. So they're, again, valuable to have around. DISC. And the other axis on the left right is, on one side is more task oriented. That's the D's and the C's. And on the other side is more people oriented. And a lot of times people are like, well, people oriented is obviously better. No, it's not. Neither one of these is good or bad. Task-oriented people they tend to think about things in terms of what needs to get done. Right. And people-oriented tends to think about things in terms of who do we need to get it done? They're both valuable. You need both. But oftentimes what we end up losing track of is that because somebody as a leader, you're wired a certain way. So often the mistake is anyone who thinks and acts like me is good. And anyone who doesn't think and act like me, well, they just don't get it. They don't understand it. The problem is if you surround yourself with people that are exactly like you, you're losing out on the benefits of those other types. Again, usually you're a blend. So as I described that, you probably thought of one of those and went, oh yeah, I'm definitely that one. That's probably your primary type. And then you also maybe thought to yourself, that other one's kind of like me too. That's kind of your secondary strength or secondary type. And again, every once in a while, someone's 3 or even 4 at some level. And as I showed you, you can actually learn to speak the other language. So I'm a DC. I speak German. It's all about getting things done. It's all about the work. That's my natural way of thinking. That's how I approach the world. My wife is a very high SI. She literally speaks French while I speak German. We speak completely different languages. We look at the world completely differently. And yet we've managed to learn to communicate well to each other because she's learned some German over the years and I've learned some French over the years. And we understand that the other person looks at the world a different way. And that's what we can do as leaders too, is we can learn, hey, which of my employees are S's? Okay, I need to make sure I provide supportive things for them. Who in my group is my C's? Okay, I need to make sure I call them in and say, do you understand the assignment? Do you have any questions? What other information do you need? Because guess what? They're also the one that's going to spot the mistake.
I just was going to say, as a project manager, I always wanted to try to find that person that was going to question everything.
Yep.
Because they would find things that I might have, missed.
They're the ones that'll come back to you and go, you skip step 17C subsection B on this, SOP. And you're going,
yes.
I skipped what? But they'll find it and they'll fix it if you empower them to do it. Yeah. And you need the eyes because they're again, they're often the people that are pulling the team together and giving them energy. And you need the D's too, but you treat them differently. If I called a D into my office and said, okay, let me give you all of the SOP and all of the explanation for why and all of the background, and here's the 200-page SOP, let's go through it line by line and make sure you don't have any questions. That D's looking at me like, either kill me or I'm going to kill you. Okay, which one do you want? Because pick one or the other. The C, on the other hand, would have felt, oh, he understands me. He gets me. He gets that I need to talk. The S's, you need to actually go out on the floor, go out to the cubicles, visit with them, ask about their kids, ask about the baseball game last Friday. By the way, even if you have to write that stuff down and carry notes, do it.
It's okay. Yeah.
It's okay. They don't care. They're like, wow, he took the effort to write it down. To them, that's like, you care about me. By the way, you don't have to go seek out your eyes. They'll show up in your office to talk to you. They'll come to you. You don't have to go find them. I love my eyes, but at the same time, they're also the ones that you had to learn to be like, okay, when the door is closed, come back. You can come in, but if the door's closed, come back later. Door's open, come in. Let's visit. Let's talk. Let's get something, figure out what we're going to do to engage the team. And again, often if I could put them in charge of that kind of stuff, they do it so much. They did it 1,000,000 times better than I would have ever done it, because for me, that's not what I'm thinking about. That's not the way my mind works.
And if you have, like I always was over large teams, so a lot of different personalities, and
got all of them.
So, and going through a project plan, that boring, terrible stuff that those D's did not want to do, we still had to do that so that we didn't miss anything, because they would have, just as I said, rambled through that project. And at the end, we have that moment, it's like, oh no.
Right.
So I needed
but
that
if
time
you can
for those
give them
others.
the context and explain to them why we're doing this and let them know, I know for you, this is really hard and you want to go out there and get it done. I understand that. In fact, I'm really counting on that, because after we've gotten through this, you need to go out there and execute on this and get it done. And I know you'll do that. And you start speaking to them in their language.
Yeah.
And they're sitting there going, all right, Vicki understands me. She gets me. She knows I'm going to go get it done. She trusts me. She has empowered me. But before I can turn you loose to go getting it done, we just have to go through and check everything off and make sure that we're not missing anything. And I really need your input. I need you to, because I know how important results are to you. I want to make sure that the results that we get are the best results we can get. Oh, okay. I want results, and I want good results. They do. They want successful results. They just don't want to do the tedium to get there sometimes. The C's, you're talking to them about, I need you to make sure that we're going through this and you're double checking everything and making sure I haven't missed anything, that everything is right, that all of the steps are there. They're preening. Go to the I's. I need to make sure that we've got everything down and in a system so that we can get it done and we can still work together as a team and be engaged with each other and, have a good time while we're doing it and enjoy the process. The language I use to describe the same task begins to shift. As an S, I need you to help us with this. I want to make sure that we don't leave anything out, that nobody gets left behind, that everybody is taken care of, and that everyone understands what their jobs are, their roles are, so that as we get this work done together, no one gets hurt or cut out or left behind or punished in some way. They start speaking, oh, okay, that I get it. That now all of a sudden they all want to engage with the task.
So taking a little bit of a turn here, what is the best way to manage your business or your personal finances?
Well, and for most of us, they're intertwined. Whether you've got a job and you've got a career and you've got a W-2 kind of salary, or you're a small business owner, and definitely, everything that happens in your business directly affects your personal. And that's one of the reasons I kind of put them together. And just for context, the Inspired Stewardship, the business that my wife and I started in 2011 part-time and took it full-time in 2017. That's why there's two different dates in there. We are focused on helping people, master their time, their talent, and their treasures. Time, productivity, treasures, money, talent, communication, understanding yourself, understanding others, so that they can go out and do the work that they're supposed to be doing. And again, for a lot of our clients, those are small business owners, but it works whether you're a W-2 employee. I always joke and say W-2 employees are self-employed with one client, whoever they work for. Okay.
Their boss.
But that's it. They're still self-employed, really, because if you don't believe that, just don't show up for work for a week and see what happens. You won't be employed. So all of these sorts of things, when we're looking at our finances, the question is sort of a little bit of a red herring in that we ask about the best way. And the best way is to recognize that all of your finances are personal finances. The emphasis should be on the word personal, not the word finance. It's not a math problem. Here's the truth. If it was simple as doing a budget, everyone always talks about do a budget. Yeah. Okay. You can Google how to do a budget and you will find 4 million billion results on how to do a budget, and they're all good. So it's not knowledge. It's not, I don't know what to do. It's usually either I don't know how to do it, or it's I know how to do it, but I'm not actually following through consistently and doing it. It's the accountability piece, or it's the action piece that usually causes the stumbling block. So again, like we talked about earlier, that's kind of one of those tasks that gets put off because it's in the important but not urgent kind of category, and you put it off and you put it off and you put it off and you put it off. So quite frankly, you sit down and at the top of the page, you write income. That's of your personal budget. If it's a business, write revenue. It's the same thing, but we give it different names because accountants have to make sure everything has its own name. And then on the side, write expenses, and just start writing down, how much does it cost me to run this business? And obviously there's more to it than that, but starting there, that's that kind of next small, simple thing that you can do. You can actually start capturing about 80% of what's going on in your business or at home. And then you're looking for patterns and you're looking for things that don't match up, or you're looking for problem areas. So for instance, the number at the bottom, if I subtract all the expenses from the income or from the revenue at the top, is a negative number. That's a problem, So, or it's a positive number, but it's not as big as I'd like it to be, or whatever. Or wow, when I sat down and did that, I can't believe I was spending this much money in that area, whatever that, on coffee or on employees or on electric bill or on whatever. You'll start to see patterns to what's going on in the money, and that's when you can start asking the questions about what should I do about it. Now here's the bigger key, stepping back another step. In all of this, you first got to figure out the why behind it. What is your passionate why? Why are you caring about the businesses or the personal finances? What is it about this money that matters to you? What's important to you? What are the things that you absolutely most want to say yes to? Because the mistake we make with things like budgets is we look at them as things that are telling us no. Budget doesn't tell you no. A budget tells you yes, if you're doing it right, because what you're doing is putting in first the stuff that's most important. If private school for the kids is the most important thing to you, great. Put the private school as this is the most important thing. I'm putting that first on my line. At some point, you get to a point where it's like, I've run out of money. I can't keep doing everything on this list. But the trick is, if you've started with the stuff that's the most important, then by the time you get to the place where you probably are running out of money, you're kind of in the area where it's like, yeah, this is good, but I can live without that for a little while. And it's probably not permanent either. We could talk about ways to increase revenue and all of that. And I do that with a lot of my clients. One of my best clients, they went from $100,000 a year to now they're making about $400,000 a year. And, another business, they went from 500, now they're making 1.2 million. Different. There are ways to increase it. But regardless, you're finding the places to say no in places that don't matter as much to you, as opposed to looking at the budget as, well, this is just going to tell me I can't have a coffee in the morning. If coffee is the most important thing to you, have the stupid coffee and find something else that you can say no to that's not as important to you. And that'd be fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's one of the problems I have with a lot of the advice that's out there. You hear the latte factor, right? Say no to Starbucks coffee and you'll be a millionaire. Not necessarily. And if Starbucks coffee is really important to your mental health and your well-being, and it's something you get joy out of, and you want to give up something else, okay, give up to something else, So we look at it backwards. We look at it as handcuffs and saying no, as opposed to saying yes.
It's great advice. So how do you transition from a job that you hate to a calling that you love? And we saw a lot of people have that reflection during the pandemic. So talk to me about that.
So that's actually what the book is about, is inspired living. And I'll give one caveat. It also could be from a job that you love to a calling that you love even more. I've actually been blessed that every transition I've made, that's the transition I've made. I've gone from teaching that I loved to the corporate job that I loved even more. And then I went from the corporate job to my coaching business that I love even more. So it's not, I've left, there's always components of your job or your calling that you don't enjoy. By the way, that old advice, follow your passion and you'll never work a day in your life, is a lie. Follow your passion and you will actually have a big enough why that even the things that you don't like, you can actually get done, because there's enough stuff there that you do love to kind of carry you through the stuff that's work for you. But what you have to do to make that transition is first identify what it is that your calling is. And one quick question that people can ask themselves is what I call the 5 years in the future question. So imagine for a minute, 5 years from today, you're walking through an airport and you just discovered that your flight is delayed and you're now going to have a 4-hour layover in the airport. You're kind of in the middle of nowhere. You can't go do anything. So you do what every self-respecting person does with a 4-hour layover stuck in an airport. You go find a restaurant or a bar that you can hole up in, and what your personal preference, whether you want to drink or whether you want to eat, but you go find one of those things and you go sit down somewhere. So as you're walking in and getting ready to sit down, a friend of yours that you haven't seen for the last 5 years comes walking up. And it turns out that you've both got a 4-hour layover and you've now got 4 hours to sit down together and talk. And your best friend looks at you and says, Vicki, how has the last 5 years been treating you? And you say, these have been the best 5 years of my life because Your job is to write what comes after the word because.
Yeah.
And by the way, I do mean write it down. You actually should sit down with a pen and paper and write it down, or do a voice app and record it as you go for a walk. That actually works better for some people. And start talking about what are your hopes? What are your dreams? What do you want? What do you want your business to look like when it grows up? What are you hoping for in your relationships? What are you hoping for in your spiritual life? What are you hoping for in all of the different components of your life? And begin to think those through and write them down. And then from there, you can begin to work backwards to, okay, if that's the direction I want to go, what do I need to start doing today? What small actions do I need to do today? Do I need to pay off some debt so that I'm financially more stable? Do I need to save some money? Do I need to learn a new set of skills? Do I need to carve out some time to do those things that are important but not urgent? Because right now, all I'm doing is spinning plates, and I don't want to just keep spinning plates. Do I want to stop working for this position that I hate or this job that I hate and start something that I want and that I feel more called to do? Okay, great. What do I need to put in place to begin to do that? And then it's a matter of starting to do the work. And again, that's where sometimes having people from outside can be helpful, because they can kind of help you clear out the weeds and go, okay, here's the small actions you can take. Let's start there. Over time, you'll notice, by the way, I said I started a business in 2011 and I went full-time in 2017. That's exactly the story I'm talking about. I began to identify what I was really called to do by looking backwards at what I'd already done and saying, what are the pieces here that are in common? What are the things that connect to me the deepest, that I loved the most? How could I create a job or a business or something that I get more of that and less of this other stuff that I'm not so fond of? That's exactly what I did, is create the coaching business. But even now that I'm on the journey in the business, I'm still doing that. Literally every year I sit down and I review, and what did I really love about this year? What are the best things? Okay, how can I do more of that? What is the stuff that I didn't really enjoy this year? How can I get rid of some of that and do less of that? And so it's constantly reinventing it to move more and more towards your calling and your passion.
Well, time is flying by. And so I'm going to just give one question left. What is the 4-part framework you use in your book, Inspired Living, to help people find their calling?
So the 4 parts that we go through is investing first in yourself. That's what I was just talking about. That's that deep work of the self-reflection. From there, you need to begin to find ways to invest in others. That's usually out of which the business idea, if you want to start a business, will come, because you're helping to solve other people's problems, or you're helping to bring other people along on the journey and kind of enlist them on your side. So you're investing in building and developing and serving others. From that, you begin to develop influence. Now people begin to look at you as an authority or as an expert or as someone they know, like, and trust, or that they trust, know, and like. By the way, different personalities do that little thing in different orders. That's a seed for another conversation on another day. And then once you begin developing your influence, the last step is impacting the world. The world here is not necessarily every person on the planet. It just means you're making an impact in that circle that you have decided is the place that you want to make an impact. Within all of that, there's a whole series of little loop-de-loops and frameworks that I use within it. But the broad framework is invest in yourself, invest in others, develop your influence, impact the world.
Awesome. All right. If you have enjoyed this conversation, now's the time for me to share my slide. So you need to go and grab a paper and pencil for those that are just listening, because I'm going to give you the website information. If you're watching, you could take a screenshot. So Scott's website is inspiredstewardship.com. That's inspiredstewardship.com. On Facebook, he's at Inspired Stewardship, initial cap. LinkedIn is CS Maderer, Maderer. Instagram is Steward Coach. Twitter is Steward Coaching. And Pinterest is Steward Coach. I'm going to turn it over to Scott to talk about what you'll find on the website, or the most preferred social media that he'd like to have you go to. Scott?
Absolutely. So at the bottom there, if you're looking at the screen, and if you're not, you can remember just this one link and find everything else, or you can, of course, go find more information on the show notes. But if you go to inspiredstewardship.com/confidence for this podcast, I actually put together a landing page that has some free resources, that has some gifts for you as a listener on those areas that we've been talking about around time, talent, and treasures. If you're more interested in DISC, it's under the talent branch. And then as you go down the page, I also have how you can find out more about my book, Inspired Living, my own podcast, and a few other free things that maybe you might be interested in. And there's a link for where you can set up a 30-minute call if you're interested in having a conversation about anything that we've talked about today. This isn't for a sales pitch. This is literally just if you've got questions about anything that we're talking about, or you want to talk more about that, feel free to set up a time, and I'd be happy to chat with any of you. And again, that's at inspiredstewardship.com/confidence.
Well, Scott, it's been just wonderful. And we do probably have another conversation that we can have to delve a little deeper into some other topics. But it's been wonderful having you as a guest today.
Thank you. I've been honored to be here, and I hope I provided some value for you and your listeners.
Absolutely. And as always, I remind everyone that life is a journey, and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.